Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, to the LCS postgame lobby after first day of summer playoffs. I'm Sjokz, joined by Ender, Vedius, and, of course, Schalke's amazing. We just heard from your teammates. I just want to hear from you how you feel, what is going through your mind after that heart-wrenching 5 games.
I mean, my heart is still beating like crazy because the whole series, I just kept drinking like energy drinks and stuff like that just to feel like I'm focused, and it just felt like we're almost like choking on stage, and that's something that I haven't done in a while. Because when we lose, usually when we lost during the regular season, it was more like we made mistakes or we didn't prepare properly. But we prepared so well for this week that going down to 1 actually made me like realize, either we haven't prepared the right way or we're really choking. And I felt like I was choking. So my team having my back was really like a nice feeling to have,
Well, I'm glad you brought it up yourself. I was trying to find a nice way to say it because you did win the series, but I felt like you were not yourself in the first couple of games. I think for upset, the same goes. Maybe Nuke was the only one that was really playing really, really well. What do you think it was those first 2 games? Is it like stage fright? Is it not knowing what your opponent's going to do?
I mean, honestly, like not many people executed this Predator Gragas as well as Sjokz did, so we're kind of surprised by the amount of pressure they put out, and also just like, I don't know, we usually get like kills top lane in scrims, where like we just dominate top lane and get the snowball going out of that, and that didn't really happen this week at all, or this time on stage. So we didn't get the leads that we usually get. We didn't play as cleanly as we usually do, and we're kind of scared. So. It's just stage fight, and it's overall just like something we have to get used to because that's our first best of 5 as a team. And I think I remember even like going up against Dignitas when I was with TSM. Like I think we choked so hard that the first game we could have won so easily, and we now suspect her. So this is just something we have to go through and learn out of, and hopefully get better out of.
But it's also one of the things that you've got to be really careful of when going up against a team like Vitality 2 in the semis, because they're a team that doesn't have any fear. They are a team that just kind of is almost blindly aggressive, and I think that it's really important for Schalke coming into next week that they're able to move away from this. And I think that we saw in game 4 and 5 much more of the potential that when they are much more focused on the game rather than their own performance and how they're playing, then they are at the level with which many people expect them to be.
Yeah, Upset was saying that as well. He said he got it in his own head, and he had to remember that he didn't change as a player because he was not as good in the first 2 games. He was still the same player, just needed to change something. That was then that Kai'Sa pick. I think in general it all looked better, and you guys did get a lot of comfort champions in your last game. You have not gotten your Sejuani at all, though. How was the adaptation like for you?
I mean, we've been spending the whole week trying to find other picks, but the Sejuani, because we kind of like relied on it during the regular season. So I obviously brought out like the Gragas that didn't work out as well, but I had the Trundle and the Jarvan, and I just felt like, honestly, on this patch you can play a lot of things in the jungle. We saw Poppy Jungle coming out from Kikis, and there are just like so many picks that you can play if you're just comfortable on it and you feel like you can actually do a play with it. It's just important that you remember that like they may be as uncomfortable with your pick as you may be with theirs.
That is a good, I think, advice for everyone that going into the best of 5s. I love that this best of 5, Ender, has shown us a lot of different things straight off the bat. You were so excited about the Predator Veigar, for instance, but the fact that so many picks become unlocked after 1, 2, 3, 4 games. And I think in the end, who adapted the best? Is it then Schalke, or was Schalke just better in-game when it comes to picks and bans?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think that Schalke did adapt better in the sense that they figured out what worked for them and then stuck to it. In particular, like the rise in the mid lane we saw very early on, that was great for them to having that ability to play the side lane. And then they also figured out in games 4 and 5 that the Ezreal was not the pick for them, because all the games were sort of leading into big team fights later on in the match. They needed more DPS, and the Kai'Sa was that.
But I'm also curious from you guys, the Rise focus, is that because you just think Rise is really strong, or because you were afraid of Niski's Rise?
And mainly that we were afraid of Niski's Rise, not because he's like particularly great on it. It's like something they executed really well with, and it felt like that they got a lot of top lane pressure out of it,
right?
Which is something that we didn't deal well with, at least during the game that he played it. So I feel like just taking it away, like bringing in some kind of discomfort, because Zoe honestly is not good on this patch. Like seemed like the way to go.
He was like 0-0-0 in that. So.
Didn't do anything. Yeah, it seemed like kind of a last-ditch effort to go for something. A lot of this came down to team fights in the last 2 games, but interestingly enough to us, you guys didn't win a single team fight in the first 3 games. You didn't even play a team fight almost in the first game. So did it take you a while to kind of get comfortable with everyone in the shot calling in those important moments?
Yeah, kind of. Like it's again coming back to that thing where, like, honestly, this week the way we played in scrims was way too good, honestly, to bring it on stage. So what I mean by that is, like, you get so many leads that you shouldn't get because, like, the enemy team is like maybe like practicing in a different kind of manner. So basically, get ahead in a way where it was not replicable on stage. So the team fight communication, the communication that comes into like the rotation is so different if you're ahead than if you're even, because you can force anything at any given point and the enemies will die. Whereas if we're even, it will probably not happen that way. So it took some time to actually get used to not being ahead for a bit. And I hope that we actually figure that out next week in practice too, because it's so important.
Let's dive into that matchup in just a second. I do want to crown the player of the series, as decided by you guys on Twitter, Upset, with 52% of the votes. It's deserved, I would say, if you look at the latter half of the series, for sure, and the fact that he kind of came back. He got a champion, and for me, I really loved what I saw from Upset. Even though sometimes it didn't pay off, he flashed in, he ulted in, he put himself in the face of danger when he thought he could make a calculated kill, and I always like seeing that more from players than the opposite. And Ender, we were discussing it before, how there's a lot of AD carries that kind of do their job always and are safe and are great at that, but it's wonderful to see the guys that do jump in when they see a chance.
Yeah, I compared him to early split Hansama, who was like flashing forward in team fights, finding a bunch of kills, and it does feel similar.
Diving tier 2 towers for a
diving tier 2 towers. See, that's the thing, though, because sometimes it does go horrifically wrong, and you go, wait a second, is that a wild turtle? But other times you really can make good plays, and it does come to major benefit to them. I remember a few games, even when they played Splyce in the regular season, where he's actually diving onto Kabe with Ezreal in late game team fights and finding solo kills, and that's what really stands out to me for this player.
We were discussing a bit about what it was, because we always go back to you, because the only thing that changed for Spring is you really coming in. And can you tell me, maybe in your relationship with Upset, do you have something to do with the fact that he's feeling more confident? Have you like talked to him about the experience you have and maybe, you know, help him feel more at home in changing in these situations or at all? Or
I'm not sure if I'm the reason for it, but obviously we do have a good relationship, because I can like really connect with a lot of the issues that he's facing, because I've seen, like, not just myself, but also like Niels go through that when he started out as an AD carry in the challenger scene, and like also promoted to a team, or was promoted with a team that is like basically world's contender just by existing, you know. So it felt like the ambitions that he has are really similar to Niels. So I felt like I could guide him a little, but I think our sports psychologist especially kind of takes a lot of the edge off of him, where he doesn't feel like that he has to be this carry all the time. He doesn't have to get in his own head for it and just say, okay, I need to carry this game, otherwise we lose. Because the structure we implemented in scrims, the structure we have in the team, the communication patterns are just so established that like everyone can basically catch one another. And I think Upset feels a lot safer right now than he may have felt in Spring Split.
fantastic, it shows.
Yes, and I do want to note that I think Upset did play a fantastic series, but I think an honorable mention is worth going towards Vedius. I do think that he was extremely consistent in this series. Not only is Poppy Chachi a real thing that you kind of have to respect, I don't think, again, he lost in this series with Poppy, right?
Like,
I think, oh, he did lose a single game?
No, you just played one game with it.
Yeah, he only got it to the one game, so he's still undefeated on the champion.
100% win rate,
Yeah,
baby.
and it's like his Maokai was exceptional. I think he just deserves a mention because like he wasn't a standout carry, but the things that he did for the team in this series, I think was really noteworthy.
I agree. This makes me think of something that Ender really wanted to talk about, and I hate though talking too much about, you know, players individually who just lost the series, but the kind of going back to the Gnar and the way it was built and the way it worked in the last game was not good for Splyce and just gave so many opportunities for Schalke.
Yeah, and Gnar was a pick that Splyce kept going for, and the more I saw it, the less I actually liked it, because we saw him drafting hard to go into a side lane and win out, and that's how Splyce were supposed to win a bunch of those games, but then all of a sudden, Chachi is winning lane in matchups that he probably shouldn't be, and then Schalke are shutting down and killing Odo when he's trying to go into a side lane. So it was the strategy that never really worked for them, and I think that they should have gone off of that for something with a little bit more reliable engage so that Nukeduck couldn't just go into a side lane and take inhibitors.
I agree.
Yeah, it's one of those things that in a best of five, so much, you have to think about so much, right? But that's when it comes down to the coach. So they'll definitely be looking at that. As a reminder, Splyce is still in the Worlds race. they are qualified for the Gauntlet, the regional qualifier, no matter what. But unfortunately for them, they are out of playoffs. This also means that Schalke will play Vitality in the semifinals, with the winner of G2 and Misfits facing off against Fnatic due to the reseeding. Schalke, of course, has a higher seed. They go up against Vitality, and Fnatic, being the highest seed, goes up against the lowest remaining seed out of G2 and Misfits. That also means that we won't get a repeat of the spring finals, because if G2 make it versus Fnatic, one of them will get knocked out no matter what. That's cool. But now, let's talk about Vitality versus Schalke 04. Oh, amazing. This is such a great matchup because there's a lot of, I think, rivalry, innate rivalry, right? There's Attila versus Upset. There's the Kiki story versus Amazing. There's a lot of good stuff for us, but what does it feel like for you?
I mean, honestly, I just don't like him, you know? Like, I don't know what to, like, I feel like that in a lot of cases, I feel like they, like, this Kicker story obviously makes them, like, makes their trash talk almost look good, because they're like, they suddenly got lucky, like, in a streak, and, like, have someone that basically brings this click that just makes it work. So now, like, whatever they said before actually looks like, oh, they're prophets, you know, they knew they were going to be good, you know? So for me, it just feels like there's a lot of hot air coming in. Obviously, they make a lot of fun, too, out of it, but I personally just don't like them.
You know,
I think that's
the team
what
or the jungler?
The team, not the jungler. I like Kickers. He's
all
nice.
right, so you don't have anything, let's be clear, you don't have anything against the people, personality, or whatever. It's about the identity of the team and the team.
Yeah, the way they brand themselves and the way they actually approach, like, a lot of things that I just don't personally connect with.
Can you give an example?
I mean, just, like, you know, scrims a bit, you know, where sometimes I get a bit, like, they get a bit antsy in a way where if something is not going their way, they kind of, like, you know, interact not on the proper way with the enemy team. That's something that, like, I felt personally offended by multiple times now. So for me, it's just something that I feel like I'm a douche sometimes. You know, I'm someone that's really offensive when I feel like something is not going the way that our team, like, or it's not going the way of our team. But it's more like standing in for our team. I'm not standing in for myself in a lot of cases. So I feel like in a lot of ways they're just like building their own egos up instead of the team egos. So it feels just like a personal conflict all the time, you know, that they try to almost like enact.
The shadow side of that could be if you build up yourself too much and you start failing, the entire team will start failing conversely as well. However, no matter what we feel about them or how you feel about the team, they are doing fantastically, and they are looking and shaping up to be one of the strongest teams in playoffs if you take into account their final form, Vedius. How do you look at this matchup stylistically?
So, stylistically, I think Vitality is naturally favored just because they have an advantage in the early game, and I think that Schalke have demonstrated that early game isn't their strength, nor is it the way in which they normally play through. I think that in this series, they drafted more towards scaling because that was just the nature of the series. So I'd like to think that they do have early game picks in mind. But the one credit that I will give to Schalke is that I think that their mid to late game decision making and understanding of what to do in the game is way, way better than that of Vitality. And when I watched Vitality play in their tiebreakers last week, they made a lot of mid to late game mistakes. And a lot of the reason why they won is because they built such massive early game leads that you couldn't properly punish their mistakes. So I think that if Vitality, again, fail to find their early game lead, then they will struggle, but they're just really good at getting those early game leads. So it's literally all about largely this man, and if he can stop Kikis from doing what Kikis does really well. And the last time they met, he couldn't. So that's just kind of the thing.
True.
I mean, I remember a Trundle game where he really limited your impact in the game. That might have been another one of your Gragas games.
Yeah, it was a Gragas game.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I think I have a good read on him. I think, though, like, a lot of things that they do are like they basically do over and over again, so it's nothing new.
Yeah.
But I do agree they are a really strong early game team, and they have a lot of heart, you know, and that's something they don't really see in a lot of teams where, like, they're crazy, but it comes, like, partially from the heart, partially from, like, this emotion that they bring with it. And that's something that, like, is really important in best of 5. That's really important come playoffs, because the teams that basically don't, like, try hard or, like, have this, like, this extra 10% coming in, you know, are the ones falling out of playoffs. And I think Vitality is not going to be a team that is just going to be outmatched simply by better macro, whereas you actually have to, like, almost, like, out-hustle them to a certain extent.
No, that's a great point. I do want to wrap up the story for Splyce. They're out. They fought valiantly. Not a lot of people had thought that they were going to beat Schalke, you know, and they came very close. And I think they give you guys really a run for their money. And even, I don't know, it came down to such small margins. Was it a closer match than you guys had expected?
A lot closer. Like, our preparation, as I said, was so much better than what we anticipated like the series to be. So basically like the game 2 threw us off because a lot of the communication patterns again that we established this week were just not grasping, even though we were ahead suddenly like they were not there. So the whole choking part like made them seem a bit stronger, but they also prepared really, really well for us. So they actually like, made this effort to counter us in a lot of ways, and I think they read us pretty well.
You do take away a lot from the series. I think that you can learn about yourself. You have a week now. Give me your honest expectations for that Vitality match. Is this, this is going to be a harder one than the one you played today?
Not sure if it's going to be harder, but I think it's going to be different. I think it's going to be a lot more snowbally. I think whatever happens in the early game is actually going to stick, and we don't have throws coming in, at least not to that extent. So I think it can swing either way. Like it can be a 3-0, it can be the 0-3. I don't think it will actually be close. I think whatever team is coming there, like more prepared, is going to beat the other team 3-0 in most cases.
Okay, do you guys feel the same? Ender?
Yeah, I mean, I think Vitality are the favorites coming in. That being said, as with all of our matchups, I think it comes down to the wire, and it is so close between these two teams. Specifically, I think the Vitality will be able to exploit the early game of Schalke, and for Schalke, I see their biggest strength as mid to late game sidewave management, using Nuke Duck to impact and get towers and inhibitors around the map, and I just don't think it's actually going to get to a point in a lot of those games against Vitality, who are so adept at snowballing those early advantages.
I just think that we have an ultra competitive playoffs. You know, some could call them the Super Six or something.
We want you to drop that right now.
they're so, like, I love how competitive our teams are. All 6 teams are really good. Splyce proved it today. Yeah. Many people expect Misfits to show up tomorrow. Many people are still looking at this team.
Let's go.
But before we, so me and Deficio. Okay, so but before we move away from Splyce, the final thing I'd like to say is Niski and Xerxes played out of their minds today. Yeah. I think, like, I still see a couple of comments where people seem to think that we've underrated Niski, whereas all split long, all we've talked about is how consistent he's been and how we wanted to see Splyce play more through him. Coming to playoffs, that's exactly what they did. And we saw what this duo was capable of. I just hope that moving into next year, we get to see a little bit more of it earlier.
Next year, the Gauntlet is in 3 weeks.
Oh, of course, the Gauntlet. Yeah, my apologies.
That's what we want to see.
Yeah, so I think that duo is something you really have to respect because they played exceptionally well.
I don't have to bury them quite yet.
Yeah, I completely forgot about the Gauntlet. But yeah.
So, in any case, I mean, there is a real chance that you guys even face them, maybe in the Gauntlet. The final thing I want... Yeah, exactly.
It might happen.
It might happen. So the last thing I kind of wanted to say is that amazing, like for you personally, you've been around the world and back. You know, you've been at Worlds, you've won the NALCS championship, you've dominated everything. What's it like now for you to like get close to that level of, this is shaping up to be one of the best splits in your career? It could be.
Wait, how many finals have you been in Europe?
2.
Two.
Lost both.
Yeah. One was Origin, the other was Fnatic.
Both was Origin.
Oh, both were Origin. My apologies.
Why do you jump in if you don't know the information?
It's fine.
No, just kidding.
I mean, honestly, like, how the last year shaped up to be, like, in the last, like, half year also was, like, I didn't expect to actually come back to a team in that kind of shape where I actually feel like that I'm competitive enough to be one of the top players. Maybe not quite yet, but I'm on my way to get there. And that's something that I didn't expect coming in because I was honestly awful. Like, there was so many, like, things that were just happening in my life, you know, like, and honestly, just having this competition coming back and helping me out and basically like bring me on some kind of path where I actually feel like really comfortable is just like, I don't know, it makes me pretty happy, you know?
Of course, I think you should be very proud of yourself at what you've accomplished. Just also make this kick is versus amazing. The 2 guys who crawled back from the depths of despair and find themselves against each other in the semifinal. I can't wait. But first, we have to play our other quarterfinal, which is G2 versus Misfits. Now, you know, I feel like the tides are changing. I feel like at the end of last week, a lot of people would have said that G2 is clear favorite. I think that's still the case.
Oh, yeah.
But the information that we've gotten from the patch and the fact that the late game carries are all the way in there, that 2v2, the openings that have come with what you can pick in the support lane, all of that, for me, makes it edge a bit more towards Misfits. Vedius, what do you think?
So I actually think the patch makes it a little worse for Misfits.
Okay.
Because if the games are getting longer, that's where Misfits have always sucked. They have been an early to mid-game team. This is a team that finds early leads, and because they have a good understanding of the map, or League of Legends in general, they know how to use leads.
You know why I say it, right? Because Hansama was insane when he could play
and
his
this is the thing. So I think Hansama as an AD carry is good, but I will first say that the thing that Deficio believes is that this is the bot lane that they can really punish. He thinks that Hansammer and Mickey can get leads against Wadid and Hyanan. He thinks this is a really good matchup and they can play around the bot side. I personally am not as inclined to agree as much as Deficio believes it, just because over the last few weeks, Hyanan and Wadid have been playing exceptionally.
Yeah.
Arguably, those are the most two consistent players that we've seen from this team over the last few weeks. And I believe that they're one of the like stalwart bot lanes that they don't necessarily carry, but they do their job and they survive. So I'm not as confident in their ability to snowball bot. The person I have my eyes on is Sjokz, because in many ways, I think that a playoff buff exists for him too, and I feel like that he just needs to figure out his champ pool. And coming into playoffs, I expect him to come in well prepared with the champs that he wants to play, and I want to see the Maxdor Sjokz duo return to what it was during the early parts of the regular season.
And your belief goes as far as to say that Misfits will win tomorrow?
No, I expect G2 to win.
Okay.
But I
Well, what
expect it to be.
ability?
I expect it to be more. I expect it to be like today.
Just win or 3-1, 3-0.
Right now, I have a prediction of 3-0 for G2. But I think a lot about it throughout the day, and so I don't know if I'm going to change that, but right now I have 3-0.
Well, there are a couple of things at play here. Also, we've talked about this in the race for Superior Analyst. You have to take a risk at some point, and Ender was saying that he's edging towards this one as the risk, but how much of a risk is it to you? What does this matchup look like?
Honestly, I'm not sure, because it really depends what Misfits shows up.
It's that doubt, isn't it? It's the
There's
doubt.
so much doubt. In every single one of these predictions, I wait to the last possible second. I'm like,
Wait,
I don't know what Splyce is going to show
Have you
up.
scrimmed either team?
Both.
Who looks the strongest, according to Amazing?
I'm just going to put it this way. I think G2 will be the more consistent team, but I think Misfits has the higher high. So that's basically like the same thing that you're saying in the end, you know. I think on a consistent normal day, G2 should beat Misfits.
Yes.
But if Misfits plays to the utter limits, I think it's
Ooh.
Is
definitely
it SKT versus?
I mean, it's
versus-
never going to be SKT Misfits. I think also like this whole, like I think talking about Sjokz too, you know, like actually I feel really bad for this guy because he gets so much flag, and I think a lot of the things that he's being faulted for, like and basically like almost like you know just flamed for, is just resulting out of the way that Misfits play. Like they don't, like as soon as something goes wrong, they just abandon someone. You know, like Sjokz misses a CS, they're like, play around, you know, like it's obviously not that bad. You get the idea, you know. So
Yeah.
I just want to jump in there and just say something good about him because I feel like this guy's a lot better than people give him credit for, and the system of Misfits like makes him look a lot worse than he is.
But at the start of the split, I think Sjokz was doing really, really well, and that's sort of the disappointment for me because it has slowed down.
But do you
a
think
bit.
that's him or is it Misfits overall?
It's
Because-
overall. It's a little bit of both. It definitely
think
is
it's
him.
both, yeah.
But the biggest change for me has been at the start of the split. It was a winning mid-jungle 2v2 matchup
Yeah.
every single game for Misfits. That meant they got priority, and they roamed bot lane because Hansaman and MikyUX were just way better than everyone else, always pushing, always getting kills so they could dive and just snowball games so fast. Then they slowed down a bit, the rest of the teams in the league picked up, and we haven't seen that same form, and I think they need to go back to the base.
For me, it was. I remember speaking to Moose, and I remember speaking about the changes to the patch. And I said, okay, talk me through what you think is different from last patch to this patch. And he said, control mages are coming back. And the moment I heard that, I lost all faith in Sjokz because I've never seen him play control like Azir, Orianna, Cassio, these kind of champions. He has never found success on. And the moment the Misfits went back to that style is when we weren't going to see that strong 2v2 jungle mid, is when we weren't going to see them playing around bot anymore. And that, to me, that shift in the mid lane meta is what hurt him. So I wanted to see him back on like roaming champions like Galio, Aurelion Sol, Talia, or skirmish, strong 2v2 as like Aurelia, the Yasuo that he found a lot of success with.
Well, if anything we learned today is that you can play still whatever you want in a mid lane, right?
That's what I like to hope.
So hopefully that turns out. I also just want to talk about kind of streakiness. We always say that about Vitality, or we used to say that, you know, when they lose a game, they just like take a while to recover. Misfits has shown that they're extremely streaky. They lost to a Wukong and they didn't recover for 7 weeks. Like, I'm overreacting, but that does make me a bit scared then for best of 5 adaptation. And I think you can still say, well, they have a lot of members that have been through it and been through it all, but so do G2, right? So I don't know. It's a tricky one. I wouldn't know. I need to sleep on it.
I think both of the teams actually have the same issue. I think I was talking about Hard earlier. I think both of these teams actually would not stand up for one another. Like if something goes wrong, they would not like stand in and say, okay, like you it's fine. You did something bad. Like we'll pick you up. I don't think for either of those teams it happens a lot. So I feel like if something goes bad, Tilt is a real.
So this is a 3-0 series. Like this is a.
Yeah, I mean, if both Tilt at the same time.
That's what happened with you guys. So it was 3-2.
So I'm not sure, but yeah, like I don't know. I'm just a fan of teams that really work as a team, that like everyone like can talk to one another, where everyone can pick one another up, and I think neither of those teams has that ability.
A happy family kind of environment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you talk about all that out-of-game stuff, because so often all we do is talk about what's going on in-game.
It's all we can do.
Yeah, they're people too, guys. You lose a game, it doesn't feel good. You perform poorly, it doesn't feel good. On the flip side, if you get legendary, get 8 kills, it's a great feeling you can ride that high.
So we only have to lock in our predictions by noon tomorrow. So I'm just going to let you guys. Do you want to give your prediction already? Do you want to sleep on it?
Nope, I'm sleeping. I'm waiting till 11:59 and then pressing the button. I have no idea.
I can say right now that what I currently have locked in is a 3-0 for G2.
Yes.
And I know that Deficio has a different vote for me, but I won't spoil his vote. But the main reason is just like, G2 has a 13-5 record over Misfits. Every time G2 has met Misfits, they just crush them.
I mean, to be fair, that also like you're counting the Mythy G2 too, no?
I am. The Sven Mythy G2 as well.
Yeah, if we're counting that, we went farther at Worlds last year, man.
Yeah, but I'm also thinking of the Power of Evil Ignar meta, where that team was arguably like super confident, found a lot of plays, and were in the finals of the EU LCS.
Okay,
and the first 3-0 in the history of
this
the EU
roster,
LCS
this
finals.
split, didn't even qualify for playoffs last split, and now they're on a massive slump where they only just barely made it in because of their 10-0 start.
I'm supposed to root for Misfits, no? Like gauntlet-wise and stuff. Wait, not gauntlet-wise.
I feel like that's all too complicated.
Yeah,
You
it's
should just
whatever.
try
They
and
have
win.
no points, you have no points.
Yes.
So I don't think...
So you can actually meet each other at the
idiots.
last part of it.
Gauntlet.
So amazing. You call it first. Who's winning that, and
Misfits.
who's the key?
God,
Who's the key factor?
Misfits 3-1, and I think it actually comes down to like Alfari and Maxlo. I think these, like, even though we talk a lot about Hans Sommer, I think he will always bring his performance, but it's more about like the rotations that Maxlo and Alfari are going to bring in, because if they rotate well, if they force the fights at the right time, they use TP priority well, like, I think they're going to win. But if they don't, like, and they play like they played in the past couple of weeks where they don't do anything and they just lose, I think G2 has the upper hand.
I cannot be convinced.
We haven't
Perks will
talked
get
about
outplayed.
Perks, by the
Yeah,
way.
Perks was the next point
We
of
haven't
topic.
talked about him
That's
yet.
the one guy that I just cannot be convinced. Like, when I think about a lot of the styles in which teams have played, like, they could abandon Hansama, leave him in a lane by himself, put him on Ezreal or Varus or something, and then have Mickey on Pyke or Rakan and just send them all mid. Put Senkix on an Aurelia and just have Maxtor and Mickey go
Fnatic
mid.
special.
Yeah, the Fnatic special,
if
for
it
example.
works,
right? But I don't believe that it'll work against Perks. This guy's been super solid and consistent.
And he is G2, right? And he's the guy, I think also he knows he's been a great performer, but he's not been the best mid laner. And they always say that doesn't bother players, but I think Perks is the guy that will also need to step up and step a bit up higher for G2.
I agree, it probably bothers him, but the reasons why he cannot be the best mid laner anymore is probably also because he almost had to teach a new lineup to actually function as a team, because none of the players were actually like competitive before, and besides Sjokz, like brought something to the table. But even Wunder, like, he had one Worlds appearance, but he always like dropped
He was
out
very linear. He used to only play carries top, remember?
Yeah, so like Perks had to diversify like the whole lineup and basically give them the ability to perform, and I think a lot of it almost like influence his own performance, whereas Caps can just play however he wants to. Nuke can probably play however he wants to, you know, like.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that.
I think Perks is in a position where I think he still has like room to grow in terms of like playoff buffs, whatever it is. But for him, it's probably more important at this point in his career to make his team function and make proper macro happen.
Well, let me rephrase that then. With that in mind, I hope that the lineup is at a point in their development where that all works and he can focus much more on kind of what he wants to do and pick these carrying matchups if needed, or pick other matchups if needed. I think that's a safer way to look at it. You had a final remark?
Yeah, I was just going to say that even though overall Perks isn't the best mid laner in the ULCS, I still think he's the best laning mid laner, and oftentimes he gets counterpicked, but you look at his numbers, like insane CS leads, even not including funnel games. He's getting kills, he's getting a lot of attention from the rest of his team, and I don't think you can underestimate that when you face against G2.
But I also think, like, you talk about laning, he also just does it by himself too, right? Because we see some inconsistencies from Jankos, and it's just something that he builds by himself, and he doesn't rely rely on his team to get those leads. He is just that talented that he can generate them for himself. So Perkz will definitely be a big player to watch tomorrow. I think the biggest doubt that everyone has is just Misfits in playoffs. That too many times in best of fives they've surprised people, and that doubt just sits in people's heads. But I still remember that they didn't qualify for playoffs last split. They're on a massive slump right now, and that same best of five-ness that was there last year's Misfits, I think is slowly starting to fade for me in this year's Misfits.
All right, we'll see. I think they have a last chance to prove you wrong, and that is tomorrow, or possibly if they run the gauntlet. Misfits versus G2 is starting tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central European Summertime. Ready Check will be on at 4:30. That was it. We have our semifinalists to go up against Vitality. It is amazing. But over in the NA LCS, I just thought it was over, but I'm still going to talk about the NA LCS Academy playoffs. It's Cloud9 versus FlyQuest tonight. It's going to be starting at midnight. Now, if you missed any of the action from Schalke 04 versus Splyce, you can watch it in the rebroadcast following the broadcast in NA LCS. So that was all from us here tonight. I said amazing congratulations. Amazing job from Schalke 04 fighting it out in 5 games. I hope we get 5 games as well tomorrow. G2 versus Misfits. Don't miss it. 4:30 Ready Check. 5 p.m. kickoff. No, rift off. Let's go. Have a good sleep and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Dragon down to 3,000 HP, but it's a 3v5. Splyce aren't gonna get back. Look at this, the next one's down. It's upset and you've done the teleports. Can they kill the tower quickly enough? They get it. One teleport's gonna come out, but Splyce win the late game and they take down. Oh my God, Schalke, what was that? Amazing caught out in the midst of it all, and Splyce find the perfect fight. Visit Church, he tries to come into the end, upset, flashing forward. He thinks he can do something in this moment. Risky! And Splyce are going to strike back in this quarterfinal. Chachi the first to fall. Kobe was knocked back, but you need to look at Upset. He has to keep himself alive. The Narco's back, Nuke Duck down. Realmwalk used in as well. Upset getting chased off towards the bottom of the fight. This is the fight. This could be the fighting moment of the series. Kobe jumps in, unleash power, not enough. Oh no, gets on the back line. He takes down Nuke Duck. Amazing stead. Chachi's gone in Splyce. They will beat you at your own game. They will take you out, and they will take the Nexus.
Man, it's too close.
Towards the mid lane, a bunch of opportunities. But we get something! Fight a bit split up here, Kasing jumps in, trying to get out amazing. Van knock up from Vander, but Nuke Duck is getting chased out by Odo. It's all on Upset, he's dodging around the side of this fight. Niski's down, Upset. That's the fight you need! To escape, Metro Fisher does come out, Upset on the chase onto that backline, squishy no, and Upset will shut him down for the moment. The turn back though, perhaps the sleep. Look at Kobe, is he gonna go? He does! In their first ever playoffs, Schalke are going to semis.